Oh, welcome back to the Secret Underground Lair. Continuing to work on the Archtop guitar. Next piece is going to be making the neck of the guitar. So you can see I've got our fretboard laid out. Of course, it's going to be cut off at this profile. I haven't done that yet. Probably should get onto that. Anyway, that's where it's going to be cut off. The bridge of the guitar is probably going to be right about here. Sorry, the bridge will be right about there. So I now need to work on the neck out here. What I'm going to be using for the neck is going to make this in 3 parts. It's going to be kind of a maple Wenge sandwich. So I'm cutting some 2.5-inch strips out of this piece of solid white maple. This is the same material that was used to cut the back of the guitar. And then using a piece of Wenge that'll be sandwiched between those 2 strips that I cut off here. So the first bit is going to be cutting this maple into 2 strips, running those through the surface planer to get a nice flat edge. Run the Wenge here through the surface planer to get a nice flat edge, and glue that sandwich together. That is today's adventure. That, after cutting and planing, is our neck sandwich. So I haven't glued it together yet. What I'm doing first is I'm going to do a little bit of research on truss rods. I was initially thinking just a single action truss rod in here, but I'm now looking at a dual action truss rod that would let the neck be adjusted in both directions. But I'll do a little bit of research first. What it would dictate is possibly cutting this piece into 2, putting the truss rod in and then slipping this in afterwards. I could always, in theory, route it out, but I would prefer, if I could, retain as much wood as possible in the neck. Of course, that's what our fretboard is going to look on top of that. It's probably going to sit a little bit more like so. And this down here will be where the pegboard will be. Anyway, I'm just kind of mumbling a little bit now, but let me come back when I have some truss rod stuff figured out. The neck blank is being glued up. Done a little bit of research on the truss rod. Beginning putting in it's called a double acting truss rod, so you can turn it one way and it'll cause deflection in this direction, turn it the other way, it'll cause deflection in that direction. So double acting truss rod to go in there. But I can cut the slot for that after this has been glued together. So I'm okay to do the glue up of the rough neck blank. The piece I'm working on at the moment is the block that will go inside here to support the neck when the neck is inserted. And what I want to make on that is a tapered dovetail. And to do that, I'm over here on the bandsaw, and I have a block of maple and marked it out. That's the taper that I want on the top of the block. And that's the taper that I want on the bottom of the block, which is, so we're 1.25 inches on the top and we're 3/4 on the bottom. So that when you look at it, it does taper in quite a bit. So I'm just in the process now of hogging this out. That'll give me the rough taper for that block. Then of course I need to cut it off here, shape it a little bit. So there's a lot of finesse to be done with this piece before we're ready to insert it into the guitar. I'm also going to use the back half of this to be the block, or the back quarter anyway, 1/3, 1/5. Use the back chunk of this to mount the pin that will hold the strings. We'll get into that in a little bit later. In the meantime, I'm going to continue hogging this out. I'll come back when I have that done. And there is my tapered dovetail. Now you may be wondering, how did I go about cutting that? And I used a really simple technique, just using a wedge. It's just a scrap wedge that I had lying around. And to make this initial cut here, so it would have gone through the bandsaw, not quite like this, it needed to be at a bit of an angle, like that. So that's how it sits flat. That's the angle that I need. Like that, I was able to push it into the bandsaw to get that perfect wedge that I want. Then I had set it flat and hogged out all of the inside edges. So between these two lines here, between there and there. So I hogged all this stuff out. And then I had to get this little corner segment out, which means I put it in like so, slip this wedge back in up to the same line that I had before. There. Of course it was straight at the time. Put it in like that, and then I was able to push it in. Could go right through and come right up to the line. So that gave me a nice clean cutout on both sides without any overcutting anywhere. So that is the rough cut of the dovetail. I'll probably take some files to that and just clean it up a little bit. And then we'll start working with the neck joint to make that fit. But that's the start. The neck, the glue on the neck blank has dried, so I'm just going to trim this up on the saw and then run it through the planer to get the nice surface on this one edge that the fretboard will glue down to. I have ordered a truss rod. I'm expecting that to come today. I looked at making my own, but what I found, I have everything I need to make a truss rod, with the exception of a left-hand nut. Now, I can get a left-hand nut, but I have to drive away to pick that up, and I can buy them in packages of 20, which is probably going to wind up costing close to, $15, $20 for the need of one, possibly two if I wanted to double that up. And for that amount of money, I can order a truss rod off Amazon and have it delivered, which is what I did. It frustrates me to no end that it's so easy to get things off Amazon. All right, anyway, back to the neck blank, trimming this up and getting it ready for use. So with the table saw, I was able to get a nice surface here, which I really like. And I got close on this one, but not quite close enough for my liking. So I'm just going to finish up this edge. I'll probably finish up both surfaces on the surface planer now. So that came up fairly well. I'm just going to run a little sandpaper along these edges to get rid of any little fluff along there and to make them a little less sharp, because this is pretty sharp for handling. So just kind of laying out some of the pieces here and how this is all going to fit together. This is the block that'll go inside the body of the guitar. Will be sitting in here on the bottom, and of course underneath here on the top. I'll cut it off where it's appropriate, but I need to do a little shaping before I do that. So the guitar will fit, the neck will fit in here kind of like this. Of course I have to cut out that dovetail. And the trick too is that this needs to go in a bit of an angle. So I'm going to have to sort that out, but generally, let me show you the first thing that struck me last night as I was doing this. So the guitar body will sit on here, probably something a bit like this. And the fretboard, of course, is now going to sit on here like this. And so the fretboard meets the body at about the 14th fret. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So we're going to meet about there. Well, I have to get the exact measurement. It'll be, the bridge sits in here within a millimeter or two in here. And there's a lot of the fretboard left over. Now I made this fretboard with 24 frets plus a little bit left over here on the end. Looking at some of these guitars, when I don't have the cutaway here, or what I've observed on hollow top guitars without the cutaway, it is a 20 fretboard, not a 24 fretboard, which means I'll probably cut the fretboard off about here, leaving a lot more of the body exposed. Which, that's fine. I don't intend this. This isn't a lead guitar in any stretch of the imagination. What I'm building is a simple, what I call a rhythm guitar. I do a lot of chording and so on. I don't do a lot of lead work. That's never been my thing. So that's what this is all about. Now, of course, the challenge with a guitar like this, with the neck and getting the angle right. So you can see the guitar neck, when it meets the body, is going to have to be on a bit of an angle. If it was flat, then that would sit like so, which is not at all appropriate. So the guitar neck, and the fretboard in particular, is going to just hover slightly above the body of the guitar. So the neck of the guitar is going to meet the body at a bit of an angle, and I have to sort that out, figure out what that angle is going to be, and then I can start thinking about how that dovetail join is going to be cut. So that's where we are at the moment. All these things are starting to come together, and some of these joints are getting to be a little critical in nature. So that's where we are, figuring out that angle. What I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to work on making this tenon. I figure I have enough wood here that I can play with. If I really screw it up, I can redo this. But let me try getting this done. So I've set up the bandsaw over here. I have it tilted at 5 degrees, so I can set the neck in, and I can clamp it down and then run it through the saw to cut off the very end here. Make a cut along this cut here. That's what I'm going for at the moment. So I made a cut on the bandsaw, cutting off that at the right angle. But now I'm cutting this dovetail. I'm actually using the table saw with so the blade is adjusted at the right angle for the edge of the dovetail. But because it's a tapered dovetail, I've taped onto this wood a little wedge, which gives me the correct distance so that when I put this up against the fence, this is twisted just a little bit. That'll give me the clearance that I want. So now I can push this through the saw very carefully and get the cut that I'm after. So that's my next operation. When I do the other side, of course I'm going to have to put it through the other way and put the taper on this end, but we'll get to that in a minute. So I can see from this cut that the tilt on the blade is not quite enough. I'm going to go over just a little bit more and run that through one more time. So that cut certainly gets us into the ballpark. Oops, there we are, in the ballpark. I'm going to move the wedge over to the other side. And we'll come through again. All right, I'm happy with that cut. Next we'll be making this cut to cut the shoulders off. And I'm going just a little bit short on the shoulders because I will need to do a little bit of carving out. Let me take the tape off here. So I'm going to be cutting the shoulders just a little bit short, especially up on this edge here, because you can see I got a little curved line there. That's to follow the curve of the guitar. So we'll cut the shoulder off here, and then this little triangle that we have left will need to be carved out with the chisel. And the slight complexity I have here with this cut is that it too is tapered. So I'm going to need to set this on the saw with the wedge underneath it, like so, just so that I get a straighter edge across the top. So this is a fairly complex cut. Actually, I've got 3 angles at play. The neck blank itself is tilted this way. It is tilted back a little bit, courtesy of this wedge, and the blade is tilted in to kind of give us that a little bit of material that we can carve out. Okay, so there is our rough cut tenon, slightly tapered. And I am expecting this to be somewhat large, so it is not going to fit in there perfectly, but we have the start. So that's kind of the start of the fit. Now I'll have to make the adjustment to the curve here and the adjustment to the curve on this block so that it will slide in. You can see that we're out by quite a bit, but that is almost the curve of the shoulder that we've got. So we'll do a little bit of adjusting on this. I'll be fiddling with this for a little while. I'll come back when I have a good fit going on. So there is our tapered dovetail, the neck fitting into the block here. It's a reasonable fit. It's not absolutely perfect, but it's going to be close enough for what I'm after. It does jam in there, so it's a solid fit. There's no question of that. I like the way that fits. So that's kind of one piece of the puzzle. The next piece of the puzzle is I'm going to be fine-tuning these curves. So they fit, you know, they're reasonably close. Good place to start, let's call it that. But this curve needs to be a little bit tighter through here. I need a little bit more of a breakout there, and probably just a little tightening up on that end down there. So I'm going to, and same kind of situation with this piece. So next up we'll be doing some alterations on those curves to make them fit properly, and then I can start thinking about contouring this block to fit the bottom and the top. Just been doing a little bit of bending here, and now have one side just lining up really well. I'm very pleased with that result. So now we'll just spin around and we'll try and get the same result on this piece. This is kind of where we're starting. So I'm pretty good all through there. This is a little sharp through this front section. Sharp through the front or sharp through the back? Let's just check that out. actually pretty good through there. Well, just a little bit of finessing all the way around, I guess, is the best way to put this one. So I can live with that. Let's make a little bit of sharper bend through here to stretch this out a bit. Anyway, I'll continue doing this. I have my little bending jig set up here. Little pipe, got a MAP gas, very fine flame or small flame coming through there to heat up that pipe. And yeah, I'll just keep on bending. Back in a minute. And now we have our second side going from there. This looks good fit. Just a little bit of muscle to get it into the final spot. But I mean, I'm not really talking muscle. I'm just talking very gentle persuasion to get it into the final spot. Glue and clamps type stuff is going to be just fine. Even tape will hold that. Okay, so sides are now bent to the way I want them. On to the next step. So I'm getting into now shaping the neck. And first step though, before I do anything, is I want to cut the trench in here to hold the truss rod. So I got my router set up. I'm just going to make a very light pass from this mark down the center of the wingay to this mark. And I have again put a pencil line on my router table where I can line up these two marks like so and drop the piece down onto there, of course, up against that fence first. I'll drop it in. And then away we go. So that's this little operation. I'm going to make several light passes to get to the depth that I want. Let's see how this works out. There is our channel cut out for the truss rod, with the exception of a little bit wider up here at the very end. Let me show you what I've got here. So the truss rod is slipping in here perfectly. It's just exactly the height that I want it. So just flush with the surface. At this end, where we have the nut or that tightens up the truss rod, this is just slightly bigger than the 1/4 of an inch. So I want to expand a hole here. So I'm going to put in a slightly bigger router bit, a 5/16 router bit, and just carve out this little section here. Actually, I'll carve it out from here to here. Because the truss rod will be sitting at this point. All right, let me get a new bit in there and we'll set up to do this cut. Thought I might explain the lines that I draw on my router table and workpiece. So I drew a line here which is perpendicular to the fence and at the center of the router bit. And then I draw a line on the side of the piece, kind of in line here. So I want this cut to go from here to here. So I've drawn lines that extend around the side of the piece. And now I know that when I get to there, I stop. I'm going to start here, but there, and push this way to get to that line. And I'll slide along the fence until I get to that line, and I know I've cut what I want to cut. So let me get on with this last cut. And there we have it. Now we can slip our truss rod in. And I'm quite happy with that. Actually, it could be just slightly deeper. I might just take that last little bit out down here with a chisel. But we are so close. I'm happy with that though overall. And our wrench can now slip down in here and grab onto that. Of course, the neck is going to be cut away a bit here, so a little more accessible. But we'll get to that in a little bit. So here is the back of the guitar with the side clamped on, fitting as I'm happy with the fit. It's a great fit. So I'm at a quandary now. I need to cut the side there at the center line, cut it at this center line, put this piece on, cut it at the center line, so I have everything that all positioned. So that needs to be done. But I also need to take care of the neck and the block, because this neck clamp or neck block is going to go in here. And of course, it's got to fit up against the facing of here. I'll start by continuing with this block. So first operation is I'm going to cut this off to about the length that I want. So yeah, I hope that's probably clear as mud, but let me start by getting this into the shape that I want. I have now trimmed the perimeter of the guitar, the outside edge, to approximately the right shape. I'm a little bit proud in this area, but that's fine. And I have a rear block in place, kind of contoured the way that I want it. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to glue these two sides to the back block and take care to get that join in there flush. So we're close, but I want to do a little bit of work to make that a really nice, perfect and clean fit. So that's what I'll do first, is get these two sides joined to this back block and a nice good fit there. And then I can start focusing on the neck block up here. So a little bit of fiddling with the neck yet, but let me start getting that block in place. So there's the cut that I currently have the two pieces joined together. I have this sitting on my table saw, so I have a nice flat surface, and I can press it down so it's all nice and firm. And it is a reasonable fit, but I'm just going to go through with my little reciprocating saw and just make a cut. Just touch that cut right through the block, just to make sure both sides are exactly even. And then I should be able to push it together and get a really perfect fit. Just going to reposition the camera so I can do that. Right, let's see how this works. That's a little better than I had before. Not incredible, but it is better. Okay, so I'm going to put that in. Clamp that, glue that, and clamp that up. All right, let that set. And we'll clean that up a little bit later once the glue has dried. So our rear block is now glued in place, and I'm gluing in the front block at this point. I trimmed a little bit off the length of it and rounded off the corner just to make it a little bit more appealing inside the guitar itself. And next, what I'm going to be doing is cutting the rough shape of the neck. So I'm going to be using the bandsaw to cut out this profile, staying a fair bit outside that line. And then we'll be shaping it, the underside of it with a rasp. I'm going to get a little bit closer to the line up here though, because this is going to be a nice flat edge, or will be a flat edge. So I'll be reasonably close to that line and this line, and then staying pretty well below this line for the shaping of the curve of the neck. I'm also going to need to glue on a couple wings outside here to make the head just a little bit bigger than this is, but that's okay. So I'll set this up on the bandsaw and I'll take you through me trimming through that. So there's a bit of an order of operations on this cut that I need to make. First, I'm going to be cutting the width of the neck to suit the fretboard. So I'm going to make a cut all the way from here, just following a line, the shape of the fretboard, up to about here. Then I'm going to make a cut along here, but I'm not going to cut all the way through because I then need to flip it onto its side here and cut this profile. So first cut is going to be this flat for the head. Then I'm going to cut across here for this part of the head so that this cut would almost meet that, but I'm not going to cut all the way through. Well, actually I will. I'll be cutting that all the way through when I get to this cut. But I'll cut here, I'll cut here. Then I'm going to cut here nearly all the way through, cut here nearly all the way through, then cut this piece right through. Then I'll come back and just trim off these little end bits that are on that side. Hopefully I can remember all that. And there we have our rough neck blank. So the next operation I'm going to make on this is to attach the little wings that'll go on here, and then get them glued on before we do any more shaping at all on this neck. Okay, let me cut some pieces for that. And there's a couple little wings glued onto the side of the head. This is a material that came off the cut from down here. So just use the material from that part that was cut off of the neck to join on the side. So it's all the same bit of wood, which will be nice to help with any moisture, shrinking, contracting, all that stuff. Yeah, so I'm going to let that set up and dry. And then we'll start working on the fit of the neck here into our neck block that is currently over there on the work table drying. So I'm gonna call that a video for today. That's a lot of disjointed content throughout the making of this part of the guitar. And I've also had some second thoughts on milling the ash log. There were two logs. I milled one. I thought I'm going to leave the other for the spring, but I've changed my mind on that for two reasons. One, I'm expecting to get a bunch of cedar logs. I'm going to be making some cedar siding out of that. And frankly, I need a place to put the logs. So I want to get rid of one log that's taking up space. That's the ash log. And the second reason for milling it now is that it would dry better over the winter with more surfaces exposed. So milling the log will let it dry a little faster. So yeah, I'm going to bring the log in. Next video will be another ash log being milled. And we'll kind of keep poking back on the guitar as things go along. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe. See you on the next video.